can we bring that divine light, which is the gift of Uranus, the connection to the divine, higher sense perception, can we open that channel and bring it right through? Uranus would just, on its own, would just hang out in the sky, not interested in the body. Uranus in Taurus, can we do this? Can we bring this light, this great light, the presence of the divine, and find it in the body and find it in the earth?
Welcome to Caritas Consciousness Project. I'm Gloria Coelho, and Caritas is dedicated to promoting the evolution of consciousness as the key to individual growth and global healing. In addition to our online presentations with guest speakers, we also offer classes and study groups, everything online. We draw from a wide assortment of both ancient wisdom and leading edge studies in science, consciousness, spirituality, and philosophy. And although we've been presenting guest speakers for 20 years, we only began recording these presentations 3 years ago. Well, yeah, about maybe almost 4 years ago now. Yeah, 4 years ago. And we now have over 100 video recordings, which you can see on our website, on the video library page, or on our YouTube channel, Caritas Consciousness Project. And our website is caritascenter.org. As a nonprofit organization, we do rely on the support of our members and donors to keep our program going. So thank you to our members. You're a huge help. And if you'd like to support this program, you can make a donation or become a member on our website. There's a membership page and there are benefits. So let me now introduce today's guest speaker. I'm used to doing this in the evening, but since Rebekah is in London, we do it on a Saturday morning because of the time difference. So Rebekah Hirsch trained in the 1980s with Liz Greene and Howard Sasportas at the Center for Psychological Astrology in London. That's the website that I still go to online when I'm looking for something astrological, is Astrodienst with Liz Greene and Robert Hahn. Yes. She has been developing her practice as a psychospiritual astrologer, a Brennan energy healer, and a voice dialogue process facilitator ever since. In her work, she combines the cosmic vision of astrology with spiritual and psychological awareness. Her focus begins with the profound nature of the archetypes of the planets of the zodiac and extends to the gift of astrology as a sign of order in the cosmos and the opportunity for humanity to gain wisdom and guidance from the great patterns we see unfolding in the heavens. Rebekah is the author of Charting the Soul, Astrology, Characterology, and the Human Energy Field. She regularly gives talks and lectures on astrology and runs her own Charting the Soul workshops. She is a visionary artist and a grandmother, and you can contact Rebekah at chartingthesoul@gmail.com. Okay, so Rebekah, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you. Oh, here we go. Have we got the slideshow? No, we haven't. No.
Okay. I'm going to switch.
There it is. Oh, there we are.
Okay, and for those of you watching, if you're in gallery view, you might want to switch to speaker view so that you can see the slides a little bigger. Okay, go ahead, Rebekah.
Hi, yes. Thanks very much, Gloria, for having me. Always a pleasure to do these talks. So when I thought knew I was going to be doing this course, I thought, well, what has changed since last year? So we had this great, we had this big shadow of the COVID years when we had the Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, and then the sort of leap into Aquarius, and now Pluto moving into Aquarius, and there is change coming. And I'm sure a lot of people would like me to be saying, it's here now, everything's going to be hunky-dory and it's all going to sort itself out. I don't think that's quite what is happening. I think a lot is going on in the world that many of us find difficult. I think certainly for my generation, we grew up in years, there's a sort of expanding sense of hope and optimism. And then since the turn of the century, well, actually since the financial crash and since Pluto went into Capricorn, there seems to have been a kind of descent into, certainly politically, certainly on that level of world geography, politics. There are things happening now that we would have found very, very shocking, I think, in the late 20th century. And so I don't want to gloss over that. Yeah, we've got two major wars happening and so on. And we've got very strange things happening with the economy and the wealth of the billionaires and the difficulty for the people at the bottom end of the scale financially, and so on and so forth. And so I thought when I was thinking about doing this tour, well, I don't want to pretend that that isn't happening. And some of it is really, really unbearable. And so what can I say? What is happening? And I'm always an optimist. I'm always thinking that there is a possibility in whatever is occurring. And always looking for what is it? What is the highest that could come through from the experiences that we are having? But I do think that we're going through a lot. And that's the chart for today. Let's go on. So I'm focusing for a bit on the chart on America, on the USA, because I know a lot of people who come to the Caritas talk, not everybody, but a lot of people are American. And also because what happens in America is obviously very important for the rest of the world. And it's your election year. I know that, and I will take a brief look at the charts of Trump and Biden, though I know it's not a done deal that it will be Trump who stands. But I think there is a huge amount going on for America. So I'm sorry for people who don't read an astrological chart. I've got two wheels here, and the planets on the inside is the chart of the United States, which is a chart that was drawn up for July the 4th. Oops.
Don't worry.
Okay, yeah, you do that. I'm just going to move those over there. So inner wheel is the chart of the United States, and the outer wheel is what is happening on April the 20th, when across the United States there's going to be a solar eclipse. I I think with popular astrology, too much is made of eclipses, but I think this is a big deal. It will be a total solar eclipse, you know, for 2 or 3 minutes, visible from Texas through Maine, and there will be a shadow fall over the sun across the United States, not just in the east. And I think, given that it's an election year and the kind of election that it is, doesn't feel normal. And I don't think this has ever happened before in the history, but anyway, I may be wrong. So I think it's significant. So I thought I would look up what's happening on the day of the solar eclipse, which is 8th of April, sorry, in 2024, and try and cut this short. But there's a whole bunch of planets in Aries. For anybody who reads the charts, there's a new moon, because in a solar eclipse always happens at the time of the new moon, because the shadow of the moon falls on the face of the sun. And just to say that the eclipses are about shadow. That's what they're about. It's like the light of the sun is what we love, and the warmth and the radiance and the creativity. And it's a shadow that falls across and it's about what is in the shadow of the human race, if you like. And also there, right next to the sun, right next to this new moon conjunction, is Chiron. And Chiron is this little planetoid that was discovered in the 1970s and very much associated with the growth of the holistic health movement. And it's the archetype of the wounded healer. I'm going to talk more about Chiron later on. But Chiron does bring wounding. It talks about wounding in the way that astrologically we think of Saturn and Pluto as talking about things that are difficult, things that places where we get stuck in different ways. And Chiron is similar, but it is different in that so just to talk about that, Chiron at the time of the eclipse is at 19 degrees and 20 minutes of Aries, no, 24. The United States, in the chart of the United States for the 4th of July, 1776, we have Chiron in Aries in the 4th house. And actually, I meant to say this earlier on, do please write questions in the chat or put your hand up or whatever. And also do say if I'm, do say, could you slow down? Can you say a bit more about that? I don't want to lose people. But the United States has Chiron in the 4th house. And there's some kind of wounding that's happening in the 4th house right at the base of the chart. Has to do with ancestors, has to do with the family. But I think in this case, it's got something to do with the whole foundation of the United States and all the historic, I don't know what to refer to them, and in some ways disasters of slavery and the displacement of the native people. And here we have Chiron in the 4th, and also the people who were migrating to America at that time, coming from Europe, coming from England, were also people who probably were flying from, often, not always, but often flying from something. Sometimes they were sent as a punishment. Sometimes they were escaping difficulty circumstances back home. Sometimes they were visionaries who just wanted to be free. And the United States has the moon in Aquarius, which is the sign of freedom. So that sure was a thing to do. But this year, at the time of the eclipse, Chiron in the sky gets back to exactly the point that it was in 1776 and the signing of the Constitution, the forming of the Constitution. So something's up, something that means that something's up. Because always with astrology, the planets are wanting to bring things into consciousness. So there's something to reflect on about whatever happened in the founding of America. What do we know about it now? What are we aware of what are we learned in these 200 odd years? And the other transit that becomes increasingly a transit is where are the planets in the skies relative to the original natal chart. And the other one I think that is very significant is Uranus in Taurus. And Uranus is a planet very, very much associated with freedom. But Uranus acts like a lightning bolt. Uranus is known to bring chaos. It can very quickly, like so with the transits of Saturn and Pluto, they can take a long time. And events change very slowly, sometimes much too slowly. You wish they would speed up. But Uranus comes comes sweeping through and says, this won't do. Shocking change, usually, very often change for the better, something that needed to happen. Nevertheless, it is challenging. So these two things for the USA, alongside the eclipse, the emphasis on Chiron and what are the ancestral wounds that are at the foundation of the United States and the people of the United States. And the second one is that Uranus in the skies in Taurus will be squaring the natal moon in Aquarius of the United States, and which can mean something totally unexpected can happen. I'm looking at this. I'll have a quick look at this. So for some reason, when I know it's not a done deal that Donald Trump will be standing for president. It's not a done deal at all. That something prompted me to look at his chart when I was thinking about this. And my first thought was that I will say I am not a fan. I am not a fan of Donald Trump. Not a great fan of Biden either. So here we go. But when I looked and I thought, oh my God, he's going to win. Trump is going to win, because here we have Jupiter. So at the moment, right now, as we speak today, we've got Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter's going to hop into Gemini in the middle of the late spring, early summer, and then moving quite fast towards the Gemini sun of Donald Trump. Jupiter, the principle of expansion, the bringer of good fortune, hope, optimism, enthusiasm, above all, the bringer of good fortune. And I thought, oh my God, Trump is going to win. And then I had a look, and a good friend of mine pointed out to me, I don't know if people can see it, but that by the time we get to the date of the election, November the 5th, the American election, Jupiter will have turned retrograde 2-3 weeks beforehand. So instead of sort of moving swiftly through the sky, approaching the sign of Donald Trump and embracing it and giving him that boost of expansion, it gets so close. And then before the election, it turns around and goes backwards and retrogrades away. And he's going to have Uranus in the sky at 26 degrees of Taurus, exactly square his Mars. So there's that's quite a disturbance. That is right on his midheaven. That could be quite a shock. Something very unexpected could happen. And I'm just going to nip over and look at the chart of Joe Biden. He's got all those planets in Scorpio, so he's also affected by this Uranus in Taurus, which is opposite all his Scorpio planets. But the thing that I noticed, that on the day of the election, Neptune in the sky is at 27 degrees 24 minutes of Pisces, and the sun of Joe Biden is at 27 degrees 33 minutes of Scorpio. It's an exact trine from Neptune. So those things are a little hard to figure out. Like, well, what is going to happen? Neptune is going to be trining the Venus Saturn of Trump as well. So let's see what's next. Well, yeah, all right, we'll go on to this one. So the things that I want to say then, I am not that kind of predictive astrologer. I think if I thought that Trump was just going to have this big Jupiter transit, I would have thought, oh God, he's going to. But I don't know. It looks messy, and let me look at the next slide.
Rebekah,
yeah.
Did you ever see or have you looked at Trump's chart from the last time he got in?
Yeah, he had a Jupiter transit.
He did.
Yeah.
Because that was unexpected even to him.
Absolutely. That's what I thought when I looked at his chart, and I thought, oh my God, he's got another Jupiter transit. Last time it was not to the sun, it was it to his ascendant? I can't remember. That, and I think Jupiter is very, very important in politics and anything that happens on the world stage. So, but well, and I think the thing that I want to say is this, that no, I haven't got the slide I was looking for. It is, I don't want to assume that I know what people's politics are, but I think this is not ideal, to be this combination of candidates. I spoke to a young American guy over here in London the other day, and he absolutely does not know how to vote. Neither of these candidates is my candidate. The same thing in the UK. We have a similar situation. No, it's not quite the same. It's different. But a lot of people thinking there isn't anything that I actually want to vote for. They both parties, and I think what we've seen as a result, through the journey of Pluto through Capricorn, we've had so much of corruption. We've seen all different kinds of corruption. We've seen the financial crash. We've seen Black Lives Matter. We've seen the Me Too movement. We've seen an extraordinary gulf opening up between the wealth of of a handful of billionaires at the top and ordinary people who are really, really struggling. And same in the UK. And that's why I just, call this living in troubled times, because, and much worse things are happening in terms of the war in the Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, and there are other wars elsewhere in the world, but those two in particular, perhaps for people of the West, devastating. Politically, doesn't look good. We also have climate change. We've got these great fires that we've seen, even in California, and this sort of threat of climate change hanging over us. And that, just the few things that I've listed there, that sure feels like trouble. And so what I want to say is, what I want to talk about is What is going on? What is trying to happen here? So I think everybody who takes an interest in astrology knows that Pluto has just a few days ago gone into Aquarius. And this is a big deal because the moon goes into Aquarius every month. That's the cycle of the moon. It's always going into Aquarius. Sun goes into Aquarius every year. 248 years since Pluto last went into Aquarius. And so let me see if I can say this. The value of astrology for me is not to be able to say, yes, Trump is definitely going to win, or no, Biden is definitely, it's not that, because I do believe in free will, and I think we don't know, and I think it looks very messy astrologically, not a clear picture. But the value then is like, so the politics is messy, the climate change stuff, it's disturbing. What is trying to happen? The whole message, the deep message that astrology brings, is that there is order in the cosmos. That if you can see these turning patterns flowing and emerging through the horoscope, on the deepest level, you're looking at the consciousness of the universe, the workings of the universe, and the science of astrology is the astronomy, and we see the planets doing that, and we see there's going to be an eclipse, there's going to be a full moon, there's going to be whatever. And the art of it is to say it has a meaning. And if you're somebody that thinks that things don't have meaning, then probably astrology is not for you, because what an astrologer is doing is working with the patterns that we see in the sky and figuring out, what does it mean? What is trying to happen? Is there a message? What is the message that's coming through here? So given that we, seem to have got into some very dark times, and then we see Pluto entering Aquarius, and then there is a value. So what does that mean? What does that mean? And I think the thing that I want to convey in this talk, if I can, the best way to understand the meaning of Pluto in Aquarius is to understand the archetype of Pluto. What does it represent? And then to understand the archetype of the sign of Aquarius, as in, what is the essential nature? And what does it mean when these two come together? And they're not natural buddies, because Aquarius is the sign of the mind, the highest mind. It's barely on the planet, and Pluto goes deep into the body and human life and power. The last time that Pluto was traveling through Aquarius is sometimes referred to as the revolutionary years, because we had the American Revolution, where they finally got rid of the English, and we also had the French Revolution, where the ordinary people, the peasants, rose up and threw over the aristocracy, who were phenomenally wealthy, not dissimilar to some of the scenarios. The aristocracy is so wealthy, they had no idea of what it was like to be poor. What we know about revolutions, so there was also the revolt of the slaves in Haiti, which I thought that was interesting. And also Uranus, this planet of change and the planet to do with freedom, was also discovered during those years. So you get a situation where things, are not what you want. The way life was in France was impossibly difficult for the people who were very, very poor. And so the revolution came out of that, out of the desperate plight of the poor people. And in America, you know, the demand for freedom and to be your own people and create your own constitution and so on and so forth. Pluto goes with power, Aquarius goes with freedom. So you know, both in different ways, in both cases, the people are trying to gain power in order to be free. And we know from the eye of history that it doesn't exactly go well. Probably better for the Americans. For the French, you know, these revolutions, like the Russian Revolution and the Chinese Revolution, they start with great idealism, like the Arab Spring that we had in 2011. And all too soon, something difficult and dark erupts, and you end up with incredible violence, which happened in France, the Reign of Terror, with all the executions with the guillotine. Oh yes, I've just seen in my notes that the previous time that Pluto was in Aquarius, in the middle of the 16th century, in England, Henry VIII, who's, you know, in many ways not a good man, but anyway, he split from the Catholic Church. He argued with the Pope, split from the Pope, and founded the Church of England. So there's a major schism happens across Europe with the starting of the Protestant movement. So these are the kinds of earth-shattering changes, not earth-shattering, big changes of direction that come with Pluto in Aquarius. And clearly that is one of the things that is trying to happen right now. And I want to, oops, no, let's go back. So if people want to really get a grip, an understanding of the times that we're in. So Pluto's in Aquarius now. It's going to go forward, then it retrogrades. It will dip back into Capricorn for a very few weeks, which is the time of the American election. And then it's going forward into Aquarius, and it will be in Aquarius for 20 years. And, you know, we are at the very beginning of the age of Aquarius, which is a 2,000-year period. So Aquarius is up, and there's going to be a Jupiter. Uranus is the planet that rules Aquarius, and Uranus and Jupiter, the king of it, they're going to be conjunct each other in spring. So it's a very Aquarian time. And Aquarius, one of the things that we associate with Aquarius is hope. To understand the sign of Aquarius, so my way of doing this is if you can understand Pluto and if you can understand Aquarius, then you will kind of get what is trying to happen here. And I'm going to go back to the Greek myth of Prometheus, which is the myth that most closely goes with the archetype of Aquarius. Very well known. Zeus, Jupiter, was the king of the gods. Up on Mount Olympus, they were immortal, having a good time and so on. And Prometheus was not an Olympian god. He's from an earlier generation of gods. He's a Titan, but he's a friend of Jupiter's. And Prometheus creates mankind from dirt. He summons them up out of dirt, and I think he asks Pallas Athena to breathe life into them. So this is the beginning of the human race. And Prometheus loves humanity. The amazing thing about Prometheus is that he can see the future. He has foresight. And thinking of the association between Prometheus and Aquarius, Aquarius rules astrology with that idea of looking to the future. Aquarius is always looking to the future. Prometheus knows what's going to happen. Nevertheless, he goes to Jupiter and he said, I want to give the human race the fire of the gods, which is all to do with spirit and the immortality of the gods and so on. He's not going to make the human race immortal, but he wants to give them fire. And this is one of the beautiful aspects of the essence of Aquarius. It's the evolution of consciousness. So Prometheus wants the human race to become conscious. He wants them to become aware. And he wants to initiate a process of growth so that they can develop and become better. And this is a very Aquarian thing, wanting things to become better. And Jupiter says no. I can't remember why, but he's a little bit cross with Prometheus about something else, and he's not interested in the human race. And he said, no, you can't give them fire. And Prometheus, knowing what the consequences will be for him, goes to Mount Olympus, steals the fire, hides it, and takes it down, and he gives it to the human race and teaches them how to use fire. And of course, this is a totally evolutionary thing, because they'll be starting to make metal, they'll be learning about cooking and everything that leads to the progress through to the civilizations that we know. So Jupiter is up there on Mount Olympus, and he looks around and he sees all the little fires starting to light up all over Greece. And then he knows what Prometheus has done. And he's very angry. The first thing that he does is he goes down to Earth in disguise. Or maybe the second thing I'm wrong. And he goes to the house of Prometheus's brother. Prometheus has a brother who's called Epimetheus, who does not have the gift of foresight, but only of hindsight, which in this case is regret. And Epimetheus is married to Pandora. And Jupiter leaves a wonderful box with Epimetheus and Pandora. And Prometheus, because he has foresight, has said to Epimetheus, don't let Pandora open the box. But she does. She opens the box, and inside are all the woes that beset the human race. Sickness, infirmity, old age, strife, envy. And these are all liberated and go out into the world with disastrous consequences. And she slams the box shut, but then she hears a little knocking and opens the box again. And the last of the sprites to come out of the box is a little sort of angel of hope. So the human race is now cursed, really, by Jupiter with many, many woes and ills. And then Jupiter takes Prometheus and has him chained to the mountains. And every day an eagle, which is the bird of Jupiter, flies down and pecks out the liver of Prometheus. And every night, because he's an immortal, his liver grows back. And this is going to be his eternal torment. So the human race has got fire. It started on its evolutionary journey with a lot of difficulties inflicted on it by Zeus. Prometheus is doomed to eternal torment. There's one more figure that comes into the ending of this story, Chiron the centaur. Now, like Prometheus, he's not one of the great Olympian gods. He's much more earthy. He's half animal, and he's a king of the centaurs, and he's very, very wise. But he sustains a wound, a deadly, incurable wound, when he's out hunting with Hercules, and Hercules drops one of his arrows, and it lands on the horsey bit on the flank of Chiron. and the arrow is tipped with the deadly poison of the Hydra, which we'll come to later. And so the wound is never going to heal. Chiron is the greatest healer on the planet. He's a herbalist. He's very wise. He travels the planet. He can't die because, like Prometheus, he's just suffering in pain, but he's immortal. And he travels the planet, and he becomes this magnificent healer because he goes and works with the medicine people and the shaman, and he acquires all these healing methods, but he can't heal himself. And eventually he's living in such pain, and he goes to Jupiter, and he kind of bargains with Jupiter that Jupiter will release Prometheus, and Chiron will be allowed to die and go to the Elysian Fields, a special place in the afterlife. So he's giving up his life for the life of Prometheus, and Zeus agrees, Jupiter agrees to this. I think Hercules is involved as well, but I've kind of left him out of this. So these some of these archetypes are very, very important to Aquarius, particularly the archetype of Prometheus, because he wants to make things better, because he wants humanity to have the opportunity to evolve. And he's got this vulnerability, in that he's suffering. He's got the suffering of the body, and Chiron has the suffering of the body. There's something about that for Aquarius, but something about the vulnerability of being human. But the vision, because he's such a visionary, Prometheus, and Chiron, does so much good. He's such a great healer. To see these are some of the archetypes, but maybe Prometheus above all, who loves humanity and sees the future, but nevertheless he takes a hit, he takes the suffering in order to initiate this cycle of the evolution of consciousness. And these are words that are very, very important for Aquarius. Consciousness, evolution. And I'm going to say, so something is happening in our world at the moment. We've looked at some of the political things. We've had years of sort of lots and lots of struggle while Pluto went through Capricorn. Many disturbing things have occurred. And here we are at the very beginning of the age of Aquarius. And I might take a moment to say that Aquarius looks to the future. And if we're at the beginning of the age of Aquarius, and now we've got 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius, so what's trying to happen? And I think it's important to mention Aquarius goes with computing, with computer networks, with the World Wide Web, with mobile phones. Aquarius goes with networking. Aquarius loves people, loves connecting people. And so quite a long time ago, about 15 years ago, I was in Africa, in East Africa. And even though people there may be living in great poverty, so many people have a mobile phone. Across the world, people who can't afford anything else have got themselves a phone. They've got themselves screens. There's something about computers and the mobile phone network that's very, very important for Aquarius. And look at us now. Here we are on Zoom. What a lifesaver Zoom was in the lockdown years of COVID. So this kind of extraordinary miracle, and those of us, that were born in the middle of the 20th century, Well, I remember a time when we didn't have a television. I remember when I was very little, we didn't have a telephone. I don't think we had a fridge when I was a very young child. Um, we didn't have a car, but then we got a car, and then we got a phone, and then we probably got a fridge, and then eventually we got a television, but not for quite a long time. And there was only two channels and stuff. So in our lifetimes, we've seen this extraordinary thing of going from televisions to computers to videos to all the screen technology that now we are inundated with. And this is another factor of Aquarius. It's and we know there's a lot of good, the wonder of being able to just pop onto Zoom and talk to you guys in America, thousands of miles away. And we know that there are immense risks. There's a whole thing with the dark web that I don't even want to think about. But, I've got a granddaughter who's 10, and it's like the risks of a young person owning a mobile phone are just going onto Google, and they can find anything. What do we do? What do the parents do? And the risks of them not having a mobile phone are great as well, because they won't be socialized, and so the whole new challenge from the misuse of this technology, and all kinds of things are coming down this part of the line with Aquarius. We've got genetic engineering, cloning, those kind of things. They are coming, and I think the problem is that we have these geniuses of science and technology who can invent these things. It's kind of beyond belief how brilliant is a mind that can do these things. And the extraordinary, astonishing thing is that so many of these people lack wisdom. Mm-hmm. They've got super intelligence to be able to invent things, and they don't have the wisdom to use them, humanely, with caution, with compassion, with awareness. And that's going to be one of the big challenges of Aquarius, is what do we, and I hear it even now on the radio, Pluto's just gone into Aquarius, all the talk about what do we do about the dangers to our young people of videos and mobile phones. And do we legislate? How do we legislate? How do we enforce it? And so on. So that's one of the big changes that is coming. Boy, do we need our wisdom to deal with all this. And there's something else happening. I talked to Gloria about this the other day, but it's been coming. It's also been coming throughout my lifetime. And there is something about the group and about groups of people coming together. And this, in a way, links with Chiron, because Chiron is the archetype of healing and the wisdom of healing and the wisdom of the body. He's a holistic healer. He's not a super brain surgeon. He's a herbalist. And he does the holistic, like what's going on emotionally as well. Chiron discovered in the 1970s, and this incredible, astonishing growth of the holistic health movement and psychotherapy, and all the wisdom that came from the East, and Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and Tai Chi and Qigong and all the martial arts, all the herbal wisdom, Chinese herbs, Indian herbs, Vedic medicine, all these things that are available to us now. The plant medicine, which, again, is something you worry about, but the young people going off to find ayahuasca and psychedelic experiences, that it's all opening up consciousness in a way that didn't happen before then, didn't happen before 1970. There was, early with Pluto and all that, there was the early development of psychology that from the 1970s on, it just boomed. So that young people today, they're going to a shamanic ceremony here, and then they're going to psychotherapy there, and then they're going on a vision quest, and then they're going to do their yoga, and they do, and all these things are available, sometimes not in a good way, but here they are, this great mash of what is healing and what is consciousness. So that's been booming and growing, again, in my lifetime. And then I think very recently, something has really, really shifted. And when back in the 1980s, when I was learning astrology, and I have the sun in Aquarius and Aquarius ascendant, so I'm very fond of Aquarius. And it's like, it always seemed a bit boring to me. Aquarius is a sign of friendship, and it's a sign of the humanitarian. It doesn't have all the drama of, Leo and the passion or whatever. And now in the sort of, early years of the 21st century, I think we have the chance to understand Aquarius in a way that was not possible in the 20th century. I think all these this influx of Eastern philosophies and native tribal traditions and so on, and psychotherapy has opened this up. It's opening up doorways that weren't doorways of the mind that were only available to super saints and mystics in the centuries past. And I mean, Teilhard de Chardin was dead long before the 1970s. He was a Jesuit priest and a philosopher and a very great paleontologist. He was out there in the beginning of the 20th century, part of the team that found Peking Man, which is about proving the theory of evolution. He's very, very big on evolution, on watching how things develop. You start here and it grows and it grows and it changes into that. And he believed that you can go beyond biological evolution. That you go, excuse me, I've just got a little cough. The human race, in a way, has reached the peak of biological evolution. And the next step for humanity is the evolution of consciousness. And I think that is the times that we are in now. And this is the essence of Aquarius that was not even visible 20 years ago. Because in Aquarius, we're moving from Capricorn and politics and law and money, and we're moving into the group. We're moving into the global village, the human race, the connections between every human being on the planet. And just to recap what I've written here, that Teilhard de Chardin is talking about, you go, in the first place, you've just got matter that forms, and then out of this explosion of the sun, a little planet forms, and it's called the geosphere. No life on it, it's just a bunch of rock. That somehow this miracle occurs on Earth. We've got water, we have oxygen, we develop a biosphere. And out of the biosphere, we develop all these animals and plants, and eventually you get human beings emerging from this whole line of the expansion of consciousness. But he's saying that in the human beings, we've reached the end of the line of biological development, and the next thing is the development of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness. And that is becoming increasingly able to access awareness of the presence of the divine. What does it say here? Today, something is happening to the whole structure of human consciousness. And he's very big on love. Driven by the forces of love, the fragments of the world are seeking each other so that the world may come into being. that these, these little human beings created by Prometheus, given the divine fire, evolving through time, we've reached this point where we are, we need to connect with each other. And I think that those of us who spent the last 20, 30 years meditating and working on self, psychotherapy, therapy groups, consciousness groups, life coaching, whatever, developing awareness of self and developing relationship with others. And he says the immense fulfillment of friendship between those engaged in furthering the evolution of consciousness has a quality impossible to describe. And I think, that's us, kind of, it's those of us who have put in the years and looking, those of us on this path looking and finding each other. And we have now reached the point where we are able to develop consciousness in a way that didn't used to be possible. Cosmic consciousness is characterized by a fundamental sense of oneness that seems common to most mystical experiences. Saint Metfile of Magdeburg describes it well. The day of my spiritual awakening was the day I saw and knew that I saw all things in God and God in all things. So we're evolving away from this idea of God in the sky and us, little humans scurrying down here, to recognizing God within each of us and each of us being part of God. And that's the evolution of consciousness, because when we really know that we are all divine and that we're all part of God, then things like war eventually become impossible. And a book you may have come across, Dr. Carl Kalaman wrote, The 9 Waves of Creation. He's coming in from a different perspective to Teilhard de Chardin. He's looking at the sort of the passage of time over epochs, and he talks about 9 waves in this journey of the evolution of consciousness. So there's a cosmic plan which gives hope for humanity to manifest heaven on earth. But such a manifestation of the plan can only be created by a new kind of human being, one who prioritizes unity and the common good rather than individual interests. This can only be a human being who has downloaded a new state of consciousness and so transformed to something better, a human in total and immutable resonance with the central sun and living in accordance with its current state of consciousness of the 9th wave. So Carl Kalaman believes that in 2011, the human race crossed a threshold and entered into the 9th wave of creation, which means that this, ideal of a human in total resonance with the divine, living in accordance with that state of consciousness, heaven on earth. Let me just see what my next slide is. Oh, yeah. And if we go back to looking at the eclipse that's coming and the challenges that are beset us politically, financially, legally, morally, all these difficult and things, and then the reality of what is it like to live in Ukraine, and what is it like to be in the Middle East at the moment, in Israel and Palestine. How impossible is that? And how impossible is it, living in London, to be in January and to be without a home? And there's so many homeless people sleeping on the streets of London. Never was in the 20th century. This is new. This is 21st century. There's a lot of difficulty out there. This is not a picnic. And but this is the hope at the same time as, I've given up in a way listening to the news and putting on the television because it's too upsetting. Everywhere you look, and there's certainly the way our media is run is part of the corruption, and there's a lot of disturbance, and there's lots of reason to be depressed. And yet alongside and Pluto can, oh boy, can Pluto was discovered in the 1930s with the rise of Nazism. Pluto goes with fascism. Pluto goes with well, I'll come to that later on with the atomic bomb and so on. I guess I don't want to lay it on too thick, but we have challenges. We are facing some big challenges in the human race, and climate change as well. And yet, at the same time, as if you turn on your TV and you're beset by all this terrible news, at the same time, this is happening. There is a cosmic plan which gives us hope for humanity to manifest heaven on earth. Hope is one of the key words to go with Aquarius. It was the last of the little sprites to be released from Pandora's box. I mean, this is tired of shudder, but this is happening. Something is happening to the whole structure of human consciousness. A fresh kind of life is starting, driven by the forces of love. The fragments of the world are seeking each other so that the world may come into being. Now, I'm lucky. I'm not homeless. I'm not sleeping on the streets of London. I'm not in Israel. I have relatives in Israel, not in Palestine. Friends in Palestine. That everywhere, we look, we see these challenges, that this is the hope. This is what is also here with Pluto in Aquarius. And there's one more thing I want to say. I think I said this in my last talk, but it's still true. Right now, Uranus, which is the planet that rules Aquarius, is in Uranus. And Uranus is in Taurus. Thank you. Uranus, which is the planet of freedom and electricity and the World Wide Web and all that, is in Taurus, which is the planet to do with the earth and nature. And they're not natural buddies, those two. Uranus thinks of technology, and Taurus thinks of what am I going to have for dinner, and he wants to get out in the garden, and wants to be in a body and having a lovely time and having lovely food and wine and sex and having plenty of money. That's Taurus. Very, very, very different to Aquarius, which just is out there wanting to improve things or wanting to play with the computer. But Uranus, more than it has to do with computers and stuff, has to do with consciousness, has to do with our connection to the divine. Let's think of Uranus goes with the crown chakra, goes with the top of the head. It goes where we can reach out, right out into the cosmos and hear from the stars and hear from the voices of the divine. And that's Uranus, the ability to be out right at the other side of the universe, listening to the stars. And then it's like the whole thing, the journey of Uranus through Taurus, and we've only got a few more years and then it will be on into Gemini. Can we more and more learn to bring that beautiful light of connection with the divine and bring it right down, down, down into the body, into the pelvic cradle, down your legs and into the earth and into the body? Can we be with this amazing miracle of the body? And can we bring that divine light, which is the gift of Uranus, the connection to the divine, higher sense perception? Can we open that channel and bring it right through? Uranus would just, on its own, would just hang out in the sky, not interested in the body. Uranus in Taurus, can we do this? Can we bring this light, this great light, the presence of the divine, and find it in the body and find it in the earth? So, oops, let's put that back over there. Okay, I'm going to talk for a bit more, and then I will see if there was, well, unless there's any questions right now.
Oh, I wasn't raising my hand, but
no, that's fine.
but I did have a thought.
Yeah.
As you were talking about Uranus and Taurus, I'm thinking, one of the things Taurus represents also is our values.
Yeah.
So will there be a revolution in values?
Absolutely. Yep. Yes. And one of those, it will be the valuing of this beautiful earth. And what are we, but certainly, and those values, we seem to have really got lost with our values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Valuing compassion.
We need a revolution in values.
We need a revolution in our values. We need to turn them upside down. And I think that's coming. I do think there's a possibility. So all that, this is very soon after the eclipse, really about a week after the eclipse, 2 weeks. This happens if you can know how to read a chart. We get Uranus at 21 degrees 49 minutes of Taurus, and along comes Jupiter, which has been chasing Uranus for quite a long time, and eventually, because Jupiter moves faster through the skies than Uranus, we get the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus. It's very hopeful in terms of vision. Jupiter is the principle of expansion. Jupiter, the king of the gods, the bringer in traditional astrology, he's called the greater benefic, the bringer of good fortune. And it is one of the simplest things to observe in astrology. If you know your own chart, when you get a transit from Jupiter, if you get Jupiter going over your ascendant or Jupiter going over your sun or moon, you feel it. You feel that expansion. You get the lucky breaks. Sometimes the expansion can feel too much. I can't cope. There's such a lot going on. Jupiter goes with travel, with adventure, with optimism, enthusiasm, and hope. And he's the visionary, a ruler of Sagittarius, bringer of wisdom, the energy of the high priest, and also the ruler of Pisces. So very much about connecting to spirit, connecting to the divine. And here comes Jupiter, the visionary, the optimist, the enthusiast, and it's going to be conjunct Uranus, which is this electric light going out into the cosmos. And if we need a vision, then this is the one moment, and there are more to come. But in this moment, if we go back, well, if I can go back to this picture of God, this is the moment where Jupiter conjunct Uranus, when some of this might happen, because it's in Taurus, it's in the sign of the earth, the garden of the earth, the body. And it may, and what Gloria was saying about a renewed vision with our values. What has happened, that we have let it get like this, that the earth is being, pillaged and destroyed by the greed of a very few people. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of wonderful inventors out there. The human race is amazing. It just throws up these geniuses who can invent iPhones, and they can invent the World Wide Web. And they can also invent all kinds of ways of producing food without destroying the planet. And they can invent new technology, and things. And at the moment, we're really, really stuck because the people with the power are not choosing those roads. And that's another Jupiter, Uranus in Taurus, let's bring in those visionary ideas about a different future, let's recognize that we seem to have either taken a wrong turning, or we've come to the end of this line, and maybe that is the key. We have come to the end of the so Aquarius follows Capricorn. Capricorn, the sign of the patriarchy, the sign of great things happen under Capricorn, great feats of engineering and political engineering and so on. But it has to do with very worldly things: law, politics, money, the police, and engineering, a very practical building of the structures of society. And here comes Uranus, and here comes Aquarius, following on from Capricorn. We need something new. Aquarius likes something new. The old values of the patriarchy that have prevailed for thousands of years, and certainly since the Industrial Revolution, since Pluto was last in Aquarius, 240 years, we've had the very patriarchal institutions and so on. And now it's time. It's the Aquarius time, and Aquarius is very keen on the well-being of all the people. Has that sense of we're all connected. So hopefully, well, we'll see what happens. And I'm just going to say that after this very much hoped for the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, what does it say? Jupiter will move on, and it doesn't say, to move into Gemini. And then we're sort of surging through the year towards the American election. A lot of people are talking about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. A lot of people talking about Pluto and Aquarius. So what's happening at the end of the year? And what's happening at the end of the year is that so many of the planets are starting turning retrograde. Pluto will actually be direct at the time of the American election, but everything else will be retrograde. And it's like a great wave. The same thing happened last year. It's like the tide going out. I don't think that retrogrades are, sometimes they're seen as portrayed as a really terrible thing on Facebook or whatever. But they're not. It's an in-breath. It's a contraction as opposed to an expansion. But it's a strange ending to 2024, with as though everything is pulling in. The retrogrades pull everything in. It's clear there's a lot of turmoil before they all start turning direct. And okay, I think I'm just going to whiz on, and then I'm going to stop, and then we'll finish. I'm not finished, but I just want to talk about this. So we've got Jupiter and Uranus conjuncting in Taurus spring, which is a very optimistic, hopeful thing. What's happening? And then we get all the retrogrades, and then we get all the direct. But what's happening after that through 2025 and through into 2026? A lot of changes are coming. So not this year, but next year in the spring, Neptune has been traveling through Pisces for well over 10 years, 15 probably, enters Aries. And then very soon afterwards, Saturn joins Neptune. They conjunct at 0 degrees 44 minutes of Aries, move different sign. Uranus in 2026 enters Gemini. And what happens in the summer of 2026 is you get this beautiful arrangement of the planets. I don't know if you can see it. You get, and if you can see where the cursor is, Jupiter by then will be in Leo at 4 degrees of Leo, and Uranus will have entered Gemini and will be at 4 degrees of Gemini, and Neptune will have entered Aries and will be at 4 degrees of Aries, and Pluto will be at 4 degrees of Aquarius, and together they make a half star. they're sextiles. They're all sextile each other. They're all in air signs and fire signs. And if we think that we need a renewed vision, and if we've let our values have somehow gone wrong, I think this is kind of what we're waiting for, and we're not there yet, you know. But we have got, with the start of this, is with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the middle of this year. And I suppose one of the things that I'm wanting to say is that things are happening that are not showing up on the news. You won't see them on the news. They're not being talked about in the media. You know, there is so much corruption and difficulty out there. But if you just look at the stars, this is what is happening. This is a great opportunity for the expansion of consciousness, for new, you know, Uranus is things that are completely new that you've never heard of before, never thought of before. And Jupiter totally energizes them. Jupiter in Leo, you know, Uranus loves being in Gemini, the mind, new ideas. So things that we have never thought of might be coming our way in this, you know, starting. So yeah, let's have a moment of reflection and see if there's any questions.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Rebecca. So Nuria wanted to know, how do you see transhumanism developing in the next 20 years? That's like the the merging of body and technology.
Oh yeah.
And also, can you speak a little of the shadow of Aquarius? To me, that's a shadow of Aquarius.
That's the next bit. We're coming to the shadow. Yes, so I'll be moving on to talk about the shadow. Yeah, well, the transhumanism, the genetic engineering, the cloning, all of these things are already possible. They're already being worked on. They're already in the test tube kind of thing. So it's kind of like the genie's out of the bottle.
It's almost an expression of Uranus in Taurus, right? Technology in the body.
Yep.
Not a very happy picture.
You know, it scares us. And artificial intelligence. Well, especially if you're born, if you're in the mid 20th century, it's like, whoa, what is this? You know, this was kind of things that you saw in comic books as your test tube babies. I think I was at a lecture in the summer, and this woman said that, you know, that it might be possible to go from fertilize an egg, and the baby could come into being without ever being inside a body, that it could happen in a laboratory, so that the mother, you know, you would not have to give birth. It would come it would come through technology. And, you know, that's like, something out of a horror story in a way, for us and it's coming, you know, it's not, we can't stop it. Yeah, go. Yeah.
It seems like the antithesis of evolving our consciousness. You know, it's almost like a denial that we can't progress without technology. You know, that technology is the answer to evolution, you know, instead of consciousness. It seems to me.
Yes.
It's a denial of
it could be
who we really are.
Yes.
Who we really are.
But maybe, the optimistic way of looking at it is that it's part of who we are. That I've always thought that it's got some kind of role. I don't think we're supposed to turn back to.
No, that's not what I'm.
No.
The technology can be wonderful.
Yes.
Depending on how it's used. but
Exactly,
to
yes.
try to enhance human beings by,
Yeah.
technology to
Yeah.
make them, this transhumanism
Yep.
is the implants, technological implants
I know.
to enhance our intelligence
Yeah.
seems to me
Terrifying.
the antithesis
Yeah.
of the idea that we can evolve our consciousness to, rather than be
Yes.
aided in that way by technology. I don't know. It's
Yes.
just,
And it makes me think of what you and I were saying the other day about left brain, right brain.
yeah,
That
it's the
it's
epitome
like
of left brain.
fallen off a cliff, left brain.
Yeah, yeah,
And right brain, there is
exactly.
no, where is it?
Yeah, yeah,
And I guess we can, yeah, I mean, that the worst can happen. The human race can really, really, really screw things up.
mhm,
And but as an astrologer, what I'm always looking for is what is trying to happen here. What is the good that is trying to emerge with these challenges?
yeah, exactly.
And and I certainly think that something with all this technology is test tube babies and all that is very scary. Um,
It's a
and
mis
yet it may be going somewhere that I simply don't have the capacity to understand. There may be some good in it that I don't, with my 20th century roots, that it's, I struggle enough with my mobile phone, with
Mhm.
just coping with the little tricks my phone throws at me.
Yeah, I when the World Wide Web
Yes.
came into being, I thought to myself, this is a foreshadowing,
Mhm.
a um, technological version of what we will eventually be able to do without the technology. Because we have these
Yeah.
faculties, they're
Mm.
not developed because
Yes.
our focus, our attention has been elsewhere,
Yes.
completely external, right? But we have these faculties of telepathy, and
Yes.
as we evolve, we can also develop those inner technologies, so to speak, or spiritual faculties, if you want to call them that.
Definitely.
And I think we will. And the technology is just the kind of the outward sign of what is possible.
Of what we're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I see uh Janet Lee has her hand up.
Mm.
Janet, do you want
Yes.
to, Janet Lee, do you want to talk? You're muted, so you have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my son is an electrical engineer, and he and his boss, and they have a small company that's doing really well. He's the only engineer in the company. They do medical devices, but they went to recently got back from a conference in Las Vegas, um, displaying what's coming,
Mm.
and it was so mind-boggling. He showed me pictures.
Yes.
It was so mind-boggling of the devices, the machines, everything. It was just blew your mind, even him,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got into this discussion about, okay, he was concerned about AI, and I said, of course, we don't want to replace people, right? And I said, you know what? AI can never do that, and it can mimic, it can copy, it can store, but there's one thing really missing, and well, actually two. One is imagination. It will never have imagination,
Mm.
no matter how sentient it becomes. Never. and consciousness. It can have sentience, but not consciousness. So that's the way I see it.
Thank you.
Yes, I think we're going into unbelievable times, actually, because all the things that you say, Janet, it's like, however miraculous it must have been to see the first car or the first plane, or when they were sending spaceships. This is I don't know. It seems maybe it seems, and I'm pretty sure that I don't have what it takes to see how this can work out. I think to come back to I think what we can do, and what everybody of us here can do, is the work of consciousness and of our own evolving connection with other human beings. Oh, one of the things with Aquarius is and somebody asked about the shadow of Aquarius. Let's move on, because actually that's not Aquarius, that's Pluto. Let's go back. The opposite sign of Aquarius is Leo. And Leos are very radiant, and Leo, as somebody with the sun in Leo or the moon or the ascendant, they like to be special. They like to be the center of attention, and they can be very shiny and radiant, and they can stand out. And if you get a really classic person with a lot of planets in Leo, you go to a party and they'll have a little group around them who's listening to what they want to say. So we love that Leo radiance. And so the Aquarius is the opposite of that, because everybody is equal. And some of the shadow side of Aquarius is things like totalitarianism, some of the negative stuff that happened in Russia and Eastern Europe and China, or the Far East, with these oppressive totalitarian regimes. So there is an argument to say that Mao Zedong began with the aim of ending starvation, ending famine in China, of feeding the people, but it came at this great cost. And the same in Russia, and then of course they end up turning back into empires, as we are doing as well. But for the true essence of Aquarius, which is what we are needing to develop, there is this sense that that nobody is more important than anybody else, that every living person is of value, and they all have an important. This is that ability of the deeper level of Aquarius, the oneness of all. We're all connected. We're all part of God. We're all, so, and it's developing the skill. Look at the impossible situation we find in Israel and Palestine, because both sides have very good reasons to totally mistrust the other side. And how do we get through that? How do we get through that? And in Aquarius, it's like you have to listen to every voice. You have to hear from everyone. And I forget how I got him. The everydayness. And so in the past, the power was all up there in the hands of the popes and the cardinals and the bishops and the kings and the noblemen and the aristocrats, and then with the politicians and the lords, people of wealth and power who control everything. And in the age of Aquarius, I think we will be letting go of that, and the fear would be totalitarianism, where we're not having any tall poppies. Nobody's going to be special, and and putting down all the Leo playfulness and romance and the specialness of the individual. That would be the shadow of Aquarius, definitely totalitarianism. But if we can get the balance right, if you can keep the Leo light inside, then valuing every person, and it's coming together in groups like this one, in all kinds of groups, in knitting groups and tapestry groups and carpentry groups and going hiking, and but with not with special people, not with celebrities, but with the people in your community, the people down the street, and then discovering that just the person that you met at one of these sewing groups or gardening group turns out to be, they've got their own kind of wisdom, and you can you learn stuff. You can get humble in a way, and I really saw that when we had lockdown in London. That it was very, very scary being in such a big city with this disease. We didn't know what it was, and the goodness of people. That so where I live, we were trying to order food. We couldn't get hold of any food, and a woman just got a big white van, and she emailed everybody. We emailed our food order to her, and she just drove around. She went and picked up all the food and delivered a parcel on your doorstep. And people who were very, very vulnerable, people started setting up food kitchens where they were making hot food to take to the vulnerable people. And so just people in the local community, this is a bit trite, but in the evening, people used to come out and clap because we have the National Health Service in London. We had, and it was everybody in London, and you could hear it all across London, was clapping for the nurses and doctors who were saving.
We did that too. We did that too. In honor of the healthcare workers.
Of the healthcare, absolutely. And those are very Aquarian things. This is not, the big shot politicians. These are the ordinary people, the delivery drivers, and so on. And that is, and I think that's really got to come in Aquarius. It's like we have to perhaps, who has the power, who has the authority. We have to stop looking. We have to stop waiting for our politicians to save us, because they sure as hell are not. And find it in our communities, find it with local people. Just get started with helping each other. And there's something about that that's very Aquarian. And I'm just going to talk about Pluto, because if you want to understand that, we've got 20 years from December this year, we've got 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto is a very, very scary planet. He is yes, sort of aware of the passage of time. These are some of the things we associate with Pluto. Pluto was discovered in the mid-1930s at the same time as the splitting of the atom. And within a very few years, we had the first atom bomb, the first bombs dropped on Japan. We had the rise of fascism. We had the rise of Nazism. Total abuse of power and othering of the Jewish community and the gay community and the all. And the most, I don't know if it's the most appalling genocide anyway. Very shocking to Europeans, because we thought it didn't happen to us. And this was all, in the years when Pluto was being discovered. So we also had the rise of psychotherapy. So it wasn't all bad news. All right, so let's try and understand this archetype of Pluto. And probably the key word out of all these keywords that I've written here is power. And in the first place, there is a completely raw power of the life force that drives every cell, every biological cell in the body. And the power of the instincts, the biological nature of if you want to spend a lifetime on planet Earth, you have to have a body. And here's our bodies just functioning, here's your skin, just making some more skin. Here is your nerves doing the thing that nerves are supposed to do. Here are your lungs, just your heart, just pumping. You can't stop them. You can't make your heart stop. You can't stop your skin from healing when you get a cut. This is this miracle of the body, and we're completely oblivious to it all the time. Billions of these little cells doing their magical thing and sending those nervous impulses around and pumping the blood around and putting oxygen. It's incredible. And then we worry about what we look like, which we do. That's part of it. But this power to live, the power that drives the cells, is very much like the power of the splitting the atom. It's that same power that has to do with matter. And it's somehow chemical interactions in matter that are the basis of biological life. Now, one of the first ways that we become conscious of that is the instinct of survival. The instinct to procreate, sexual instinct, the instincts that lead to anger, to violence. And then the instinct of love, motherly love, the instinct of love for the newborn baby, and so on. And these, again, you don't really think about these. You don't think about the anger that erupts when somebody is threatening your child. You don't. They're not exactly. They're not head processes. They are happening in the guts, and this is Pluto. These gut instincts, passion, sexuality, procreation. And then in relationship, who has the power? Because you've got the power of your own life force. And then the way our world is, as you're growing up, your power gets thwarted. And you either feel the victim of somebody else's power, or you're going to get power over them. This is all to do with Pluto. And Pluto is the lord of death. He's the lord of the underworld. And a lot of our issues around power are to do with survival. And are we going to make it or not? So there are a lot of ways that Pluto in Aquarius, the things could not go well. But Pluto also rules birth. It also is by far, of all the planets, the most transformational. And one of the symbols of Pluto is the phoenix rising from the ashes. So when you get Pluto traveling through Aquarius, you sure as hell are going to get some moments of where the power goes wrong. Power ends up in the wrong hands, doesn't go well, doesn't do what you want. But the hope is that we take Pluto through the highest of Aquarius and the best of Pluto that something is, Pegasus, the phoenix, something is coming, something will rise out of this transit. And this is let's see if I can move this around. Nope, I can't. Go back. Oh, here we go. Pluto in the chart has very much to do with the shadow. So Pluto is the king of the underworld. I'll go back. He rules the underworld, and he's the lord of destruction. And he's, just put there Shiva in the Hindu is also Shiva, the destroyer, brings death, and he lives in the underworld. And is very feared because of that, the angel of death. But he's also associated with the shadow. So a lot of, it's sort of Pluto has bad press in astrology, and it quite deservedly so. When a young person gets hit by a Pluto transit or something, they can have a very, very hard time if they've not got a more older person's resilience. And they over here, these are some of the story, the images to do. So what is the shadow? The shadow, is something that has been pushed away from the light of consciousness. And you get these archetypal mythic images of dragons and the Minotaur and Medusa with the head, these snakes. It's things that are, the things that go into the shadow are things that are very painful. You don't want to be thinking about them all the time. You push them into the shadow because they don't fit with having a nice sunlit life. And the fates, there's the three fates in Greek mythology. They go a little bit with that part of Pluto, which is the instincts. It's like something that is out of our control. We don't like that. Especially in the middle years of our life, we like to say, well, I've got enough money, I'm doing quite well in my career, whatever, I've got control over my life. And here are the fates, the mysterious forces of life that can take all that away from you just like that. Confrontations with life and death, loss, where you're not the powerful one, where you don't succeed in getting your own, where you are disempowered by society, by family. These are all things that do with Pluto. And this image here is the Heracles and the Hydra. No, we do have time. Yeah, we've still got a bit of time. One of the Heracles was this great macho Greek hero, and he was set a task, and there was a swamp, a dark swamp. I can't remember where it was. Anyway, and in the swamp was the Hydra. And Hydra kept coming out and killing people. Hydra was a 9-headed monster, 9 serpent heads. One of them, I think one was deadly poison. And Hercules is given the task, he has to kill the Hydra. So he wades into the swamp, and he's all sort of shrouded in fog and mist, and you can barely see it, so dark. And here comes the Hydra. And the thing with the Hydra is if you chop off one of its snaky heads, 2 more will grow in its place. And one of them is deadly poison. So this is one hell of a task for Hercules, is, wrestling with the Hydra. And he realizes he can't win by chopping off its heads, that it's just getting more and more powerful. And then what he does is he gets right down into the swamp, into the dark, into the mist, and he gets underneath the Hydra. And with his mighty strength, he lifts it up out of the swamp, raises it above the clouds of fog into the light of the day. And when the Hydra is struck by the rays of the sun, it immediately dies. And this is the great image for Pluto.
Embracing the shadow.
Embracing the shadow, absolutely. You bring it into the light of consciousness. And as long as you try to kill it, and as long as you try to exterminate it, it gets more and more and more powerful. And the fates are going to do their thing no matter what you want. And Medusa's there waiting to freeze you. And yes, embracing the shadow. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But this is one of the things. So that question about what is the shadow of Aquarius, we need to know what that is. We need to know totalitarianism, control, everybody's got to be the same. Nobody can be special. And the sort of worst aspects of Soviet Russia, China, totalitarianism, people getting disappeared, all that, the control of the state, and the oppressing of what is unique and special. and romantic. That was, you know, the Leo qualities. That would be the shadow of Aquarius as well. And then everything that we've talked about, technology, about technology that's just gone up out of the head, mental, out of touch with the body, out of touch with compassion, out of touch with humbleness, you know, with the fact that maybe we don't know.
Yeah, and for me, the shadow of power, of external power, you know, the shadow shows us what we need for wholeness in ourselves, but it's not the way that we see it in projected form is always negative. But, you know, like if you take totalitarianism as the shadow of Pluto and Aquarius, that is too much control, too much power in the hands of, you know, one person.
Yes, it is. It's true. It's the old model.
So that's it's the abuse of power, but it's that external power. And if we look at it as symbolic of what we need to embrace, it's our own authentic power.
Absolutely. That's absolutely it. And if you've ever heard, you know, when you have a Pluto transit, it very often things do not go the way that you want them to. But at the end of it, by which I mean with Pluto is active in a certain part of your chart, you have changed. You are different. It really does bring transformation, and you have a sense of personal power that you did not have when the transit began. And in fact, I'm just going to go back to this because this is one of the stories most associated with Pluto is that of Persephone. He's a very mysterious god. You know, you don't hear a lot about Pluto, but the famous story, Pluto, that Persephone is a young maiden. She's out one day. Her mother is Ceres, the goddess of the harvest, and she picks a narcissus, which is the flower that has to do with self-reflection, but it's the flower of Pluto. So out from under the earth, he emerges in his great black chariot with his black horses, grabs Persephone, drags her back down into the undergrowth. The ground opens up and she is gone. And her mother, Ceres, comes to look for Persephone at the end of the day, and nobody knows where she is. Where is Persephone? And she's wandering around looking for Persephone, and Ceres is bereft. And she is the goddess of fertility. She's the goddess of the harvest. She makes everything grow. She's so upset about the loss of Persephone that the whole world goes into famine. And so then Jupiter is looking down and thinking, okay, we've got to do something. So he sends Mercury out and says, what has happened to Persephone? Where is she? And Mercury finds out that she is down in the underworld. She's been, you know, abducted by Pluto and dragged down to the underworld. So Jupiter sent Mercury down to negotiate for the return of Persephone. And it's going to be okay. And Pluto has agreed to return Persephone to her mother on the condition that I can't remember where the condition comes, that she hasn't eaten anything while she's in the underworld. And Pluto's been, Persephone's been very unhappy in the underworld. But at the last minute, she eats 6 seeds of a pomegranate. And that means that she cannot return to her old life of living with her mother as the maiden. What it means is she's going to spend 6 months of the year above the ground with Ceres, and she brings the spring and she brings the flowers and the harvest. 6 months of the year she goes back underground, and she is to the land of the dead, and she is the bride of Hades. And the meaning of this story, this is the story of Pluto, and this is the story of transformation. In some versions of the story, she deliberately ate the 6 seeds of the pomegranate. And she becomes, by doing that, she becomes a great queen. She becomes immensely powerful. She becomes the goddess of the spring, and she becomes the queen of the underworld. And this is, speaks of that journey. At the beginning of the story, she's, barely more than a girl, and she knows nothing. And she's lived this incredibly sheltered life with the protection of her doting mother. And she does nothing but play. And then she is abducted and ravished, and everything goes very badly wrong. And she's down in the underworld with the souls of the dead. And she doesn't know how she's going to get back. And this is life. This happens in life. When it doesn't go the way that you want it to, and you end up down in the underworld with somebody that you don't want to be with. And the point of it is that she couldn't, the deal is that when you come to planet Earth, you don't get to stay and be a maiden for the whole of your life. You don't get to be a child. We move on. We grow up. We move into different stages. And part of that journey is about power. And then, she eats the seeds of the pomegranate because she knows she's got to grow up. And she does. She becomes the goddess of the beloved goddess of the spring, and she becomes the queen of the underworld. And this is, where we are. Oh, yeah. That's the image of, let's go back. Pluto in Aquarius. Who has the power? Where is the power? Can I find it in me? But more than that, can we do this process of transformation so that this great star that's coming, or the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, that we start to be able to, that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, that's a vision, new vision that, Uranus is originality, things that you never thought of before. New ways of doing society, new ways of being in groups, a new way. There's this new possibility of connecting in ways that were not possible in centuries past. We have a sense, so many of us are in these little groups, bringing in our connection to the divine, the world of spirit, the angels, the ancestors, all those non-physical beings that can accompany us on this journey. And that is and this, this is the hope of Uranus in Taurus, going from the Uranus connection to, because Uranus Aquarius does, they develop that higher sense perception to reach out to the stars, to the cosmos, to hear the voice of God. And you have to be very, very careful when you hear the voice of God. But bring it down, bring it into the earth, bring it into the body. And I'd forgotten that I wrote the copy of this. The experience of mutual awakening holds the key to the future. That's right. At this point in history, we must develop the ability to turn towards the space between us in a stance of open surrender, which is really, really hard, but to be with each other in our vulnerability. And when we can do that, we enter into a dimension of unity and connection that we intuitively know is the reality that we are meant to live together. This consciousness of mutual awakening activates and unleashes a profound level of creativity and care that will evolve humanity's consciousness to the next stage. So any of us who've had those experiences in meditation, in a healing session, in prayer, whatever, and feeling the presence of the divine, and then seeing it in another, really having the experience of the oneness of the way that we are all connected and all of life is connected, and that we are connected to the divine and so on, then that is the change. And those are all those connections, those transcendent connections, those are the highest of Aquarius. to be in a group with other people and to know the divinity of every person in that group, and to feel the heart connection, and to all of life, to animals and plants and the planet, and to God, to have the experience of unity and oneness. And that is the highest of Aquarius, and that is the hope of Pluto in Aquarius.
Mhm.
Think
Wonderful.
that's it. Yes.
Well, we are just about out of
I
time.
can't believe how quickly the
I
time has
know,
gone.
it goes so fast.
Yes.
And there are a couple of comments in the chat. Very quickly, Melissa asked, is there a Prometheus story post-release? I don't know.
No.
No. Okay,
Well, you know,
good.
Chiron dies. Well, I bet there is, but and gets to go and live in, you know, in the Elysian fields. And Prometheus just goes back to being Prometheus, really.
Mm. Okay.
That's a good question, because the thing with Chiron and Prometheus is that they suffer. Normally in the Greek myths, it's the human beings that are doing the suffering, and they're not proper gods. They're not Olympian gods, and they do the suffering. And Prometheus is leading us to something, and through, you know, it's like Jesus in a way. It's by the crucifixion that we come to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So not to avoid that journey. It's part of being human, is the whole Pluto and the Chiron and the wounding and the suffering. But through that, you know, something else is born, something beautiful.
Okay. And then Nuria said something about the loss of freedom of speech, and I think she was referring to something that was being said, but I don't know.
About the shadow of Aquarius.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And Edna said, this has been wonderful to hear. I was so disheartened by what has been going on. This gives me hope and understanding. So that's good.
Yes. Absolutely. That's the thing.
Janet Lee just raised her hand again.
Yeah.
Janet, unmute yourself.
I'm
unmuted. You are unmuted. Yes. Yes.
When I see I'm old.
Me too.
So I've had a long time to learn. And one of the things I see is that the darkness gives us choice. In other words, you know, this is what we're here for, is making choices. And then as we move on, you know, we get more choices. And one of the things that was really interesting to me is my husband has passed, but I connected with a woman who can channel Jim for me. And the thing that really surprised me, it kind of opened me up to more thinking, is that even after you pass, you have so many choices. And so again, life goes on, you know, with choices. And that's what's important, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, by the way. Thank you.
Totally welcome. Yeah, I'm a great believer in free will and choice. I don't think I think some things are, but anyway, yes.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that Pluto brings us is we can't make choices about what is wrong in the world until we see it. And Pluto will show it to us. Pluto always shows us what's wrong in terms of whatever sign it's going through. So in Capricorn, it showed us abuse of power, among other things, you know, in government and so it gives us the opportunity to see things that need to be redeemed, need to be changed, need to be, you know, chosen to change, right?
Yes.
So in that sense, it does give us choice. I had one last quick question. You were talking about Carl Kalaman, the author of The 9 Waves of Creation. Did he base this? You said he says in 2011, humanity crossed a threshold into the 9th wave of creation. And what did he base that on? Was that astrological or what?
No, it's a lot of where's the book? It's things like the Mayan calendar and stuff like that. There's a lot of calculations, and
Okay.
it's not just that though. It's more than that. Yes, and I'm not an expert on this, and this is not my particular view. It's like all those calendars and things that just gets a bit complicated for me. But what I felt about his work is that I also feel that something very big has shifted in our times.
Yes.
And we're right at the beginning of it. And the age of Aquarius lasts 2,000 years. So we're only even, at the beginning of the transit of Pluto for 20 years. But I think I have a sort of felt embodied sense of something happening that I almost can't believe, but it is happening.
Yeah. I think many people are feeling that.
The expansion of this unity, this field of consciousness that we are building, this field of light around the planet, and that doesn't get into the news.
Right.
But a lot of us can see it and feel it.
Yes. And participate in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
well, that's how it's built.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's us doing that, reaching out to each other.
And doing exactly what we're doing right now. Which
absolutely, Gloria. Absolutely.
About it
yes.
And sharing our thoughts.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Rebekah. As always, it's been a pleasure listening to you and your perspectives and learning from you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
lovely to be there. Yeah.
And thank you to all of you who attended, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.